This post is about porn addiction, but it's a little bit sparse on details, right? But the message of the post is that hey, it's awful. It ruins my mental health, and I want to get better, but basically I don't know how, right? And that's why it's posted on the deciding to be better. So the really important thing in figuring out anything kind of addiction is the reason why, right? So, for example, why do smokers smoke? And if they quit, right? Like, what's the first thing that they're gonna feel as they feel the craving? For people who use substances, what's the first thing that's gonna pop up in their mind when they don't use? Is it gonna be uneasiness? Is it gonna be frustration? Is it gonna be intense boredom? This is different for everybody, but it's important to recognize the underlying reason that keeps you drawn to whatever you're addicted to in the first place. But if you will recall from the earlier videos, there is three kind of ways to suffer, right? In big, broad categories. Number one was desire. Number two was consumption. And number three is kind of ignorance or not being wise. So let's talk about addiction in general in the three categories so that you can kind of figure out what that might look for you. So, desire. I want, right? So, related to pornography addiction, what would that look like? So, I want something. What do I want? So now that will depend on what the outcome of your, like pornography, like watching habits are, right? So for some people, it will just be about like observing. For some people, they will want to climax through the help of pornography. For some people, it is just they want that way to get that dopamine, right? So basically, they chase that kind of a thrill. They chase this feeling of I really need that distraction right now. So desire related suffering related to addiction is when it's not there, when it's been sufficiently removed from my life, I feel this craving because I want to. And I want to engage in these things to distract myself, to feel better, to blah blah blah, whatever it is. But there's the want part. So that's one broad way. Second one is consumption. So this is the case where you're so deeply ingrained in the practice of addiction that you don't even recognize, and you just after you're after you have turned on, after you have looked at it, then you're like, oh, wait, what just happened? So it's almost like you have this really unconscious routine and you're just consumed. And you keep finding yourself after the fact. And you keep finding yourself midway. You keep finding yourself not being in conscious control of every step. And now, for this kind of suffering, what's gonna happen when you remove whatever you're addicted to is that it's gonna be really hard to stay with yourself. It's gonna make you really antsy, and you're gonna want to just like the inner tension is gonna build, and you're just gonna want to release it in the way you know how. So that's what it would look like in the case for the being consumed by something. And then the third is like ignorance, right? So this is where things get a little intellectual. This is where things get a little bit like thought-y. So you may engage in consumption of pornography because you think that there's no way that you can get the people who are that attractive with yourself because of your facial features, because of your physique, because of how tall you are and things like that. So you can fall into this kind of a cognitive trap that kind of dooms you to a romantic life that you desire. Or you might have a skewed, warped sense of reality And now you find that all the scenarios that you see in like adult material is feels more natural to you, and you find real world with more like friction than you might anticipate from a video. And you might be like, you might have another warped kind of a perspective related to how males and females are portrayed in the media these days, right? And so because of these things, you're not seeing things clearly in the way that it will help you see that, oh wait, like you're not basically, I'm pursuing this because, oh okay, like I have a skewed view of how I see gender. I have a skewed view of how I see my masculinity or like femininity. Is that the right word? I have a skewed view of how I think sexual tensions need to be resolved. So the more you understand yourself, the more you understand how genders interact, the more you understand like how actually often does biologically like sexual tension need to release itself. The more you learn and the more you wisdom you attain, the better you can be at distancing yourself, right? So in this kind of a suffering, when you remove the sort of addiction part away from you, what you're gonna see is a lot of mind drama. It's just going to be a lot of like thoughts. So to summarize, in terms of like addiction and specifically pornography addiction, if it's a desire, then you're when you remove it, you're gonna yearn for it. You're gonna be like, oh, I really want it, I really want it, and then it's just gonna occupy your mind. If it's consumption, you will most likely keep catching yourself after the fact. And when you try to remove the addiction, then you're going to find yourself like the inner tension building, and it's going to be a little bit different from that like yearning feeling. And the third is the intellectual, like not being like not seeing things in a wise way. And that when you remove the addiction, it'll feel like a lot of mind drama. You're going to have a lot of thoughts. And so using these three criteria, you can kind of sense why, like what the nature of your addiction is. Underlying what the nature of your underlying mechanism that keeps you going to that addiction will be. So hope this helps in finding what kind of drama it is, what kind of a trouble it is, because that will help you now navigate towards the appropriate next step.